Hello and welcome to CG Visuals. My name's Zach, and today we'll be having a look at the Patronus effect in Trapcode Magic. So starting off in After Effects, we'll be using Trapcode Particular version 5, and we'll navigate to the Patronus effects. And first we'll have a look at the Patronus ward effect and how to composite that into the scene. So let's start by opening up the export comp. As you can see, we can import the projects or opening them. And so this is the export comp where our effect will be composited with the lighting and all of the post-processing effects. And to integrate this into our shot, we're going to customize this effect in the particles comp. So as you can see, it's a fully 3D simulation that we can rotate around, and we can see what the simulation looks like. And we can also modify things like the direction, orientation of the ward itself. So that's great for having an overview of the simulation. And so what we're going to do is bring in a custom plate that we filmed. So this has a guy standing in the forest with his wand stretched out, and you can see the kind of effect that we're going to go for. And before we can add visual effects, we need to track our scene using the camera tracker here. And so that will give us a 3D track, and then we can just right click on one of these points and select null and camera, and that will just give us a position reference for where our wand should be. Then we can copy our camera and our plate, and if we come into the layers here, you can see the red layers are the particles themselves. So we'll just put our camera, replace our scene camera with the tracked camera, place our footage underneath the simulation, and then what we can do is we can copy the position of our wand reference, and rather than just pasting that into the casting locator, because if we do that, that will change the position relationship between the target locator and the casting locator, and it's quite specific how close the target locator needs to be. So an easier way to get the effect into the position we want is to select both of them and move the effect uniformly. And so we can get that into position. Looks like he's kind of casting that into the distance, so as we adjust this, we can slowly morph this effect until we get the kind of look that we're going for. We'll also put a bit of quick color correction on our background here, just to try and simulate night, make the Patronus easier to see. And then once we've done that, we'll also want to track the effect to the tip of the wand as well. So we can make a few adjustments there to the wand radius. We can modify how large the shield will be by both the radius and the distance there. Then this is the fun part where we just go through and just make sure that this 3D effect is tracked to the wand there. So that'll make quite a nice difference. And so once that's done, we'll also just adjust these emission keyframes so that the wand only begins emitting at the point that would be appropriate in the footage. And we'll do a quick initial pre-render just to see what we've got. And so we can see the wand is in the right place, but we also want to keyframe the target locator as well, so that as he moves the wand down, the kind of direction that the ward is traveling in will also travel down with his wand as well. So let's just move that down a little bit. It'd be quite interesting to see what this effect would look like from different perspectives as well. So, but this is the iconic kind of image that you remember from the films. So I'm actually going to keyframe the ward radius as well. You can see we can press U on the casting controls to see our keyframes. And then when it gets to the end, I'm actually going to, because we can see the edge of that shield is kind of going forward a bit more, so I'd like the kind of radius to be a little bit larger. And so we can work quite quickly here just by making those adjustments until we get something that looks the way we want it to. So I just did a small change there, and I think that was quite a good improvement. So let's do another quick pre-render. And so now we have our ward moving down with the direction of the wand as well. So I'm going to disable the footage there, and instead of having that in the particles comp, I'm going to paste that into the export comp. And we'll just move it below that guide layer. And you can see it's adding some extra glows and stuff, and it's also adding this scene environment lighting as well, which is based on the color and brightness of the wand. So we can adjust the environment light distance, but because the floor plane, the camera is quite close to the ground, we're not quite getting the perspective we want on that lighting. So I'm going to unhide the layers. You can see we've got our scene lighting, and it's controlled by this alpha matte, which has a kind of a perspective shift on it. So I could just make some further adjustments on that, just to really kind of get it into the position that makes sense there. All about creating a nice looking image. And we can also, you know, we could try screen or additive. I think additive's quite nice. So that's all looking pretty satisfying. Another technique, a tip when you're trying to do a day to night color grade, is you can actually bring an image that you're trying to replicate. So I wanted to get the look of this spooky dark forest. And what we can actually do is just blur this image, bring it above our footage, apply a soft light blending mode, and that's now inheriting the colors of that image. And so we can use that as a way to kind of cheat to get a bit of interesting color grading going on there. A little bit more than maybe what we could do just with curves and custom effects, and then we can obviously pull that back a little bit. So we're getting quite a nice day to night there, and it's not too dark. We've also got these glow layers in the particles pre-comp, and you know, there's no reason why you can't duplicate those glows and start trying to get some more interesting looks depending on how bright you want things to look. What I sometimes like to do to enhance a shot is just find kind of a texture image of some lens dirt. There's loads of images on Google that you can download of lens dirt. And so if I'm just maybe making an image, or you know, I just want to sort of have that more gritty effect of having lens dirt, you know, we can come and add that in, put some lens blur, maybe tint the effect a little bit, and then we've got like a different look. So I've just lowered the opacity a little bit, and so yeah, we've created quite a nice looking image there. So personally, I probably I tone the glow down a little bit, but that just gives you an idea of how you can composite things to get some interesting looks. So we're going to import a completely new project here, and this time we're going to import the Patronus Maxima effect. And so we'll do the same thing again. We'll go into the export comp. So this one's performs a little bit slower because it's a much larger effect. So in this project, we'll have a look again at using those optimizations so that we can work quite quickly. And I don't recommend trying to work in the export comp with a live simulation, because not only does it have to process the simulation, but also all of the post-processing, everything added together that can make the export comp quite slow. So it's nice just to get a look at what's happening, but once we've done that, we'll go into the particles comp. And you can see we've got, if you just want the glowing wand effect, for those close-up shots, you don't need the expanding, pulsating orbs. We can just solo the wand and have a look at what's happening there. And although that's not too bad, I mean, you could track that to the wand. You know, you'd work quite quickly that way. Probably disable the effect while I'm just, you know, tracking things to the wand. We've also got these pulsating orbs here as well, which are probably the slowest effects. So what I can actually do is just come to the rendering section of Particular and just reduce the number of visible particles to 10% to give us like a proxy simulation that will just be our kind of guide. And we'll disable that host of effects as well, which After Effects does take some time to process. And so now we can just see what is actually happening with the particles. And so now we can actually just, you know, kind of understand what's happening in 3D space. And so, like we did before, we'll bring in another plate that we have here. We'll just, you know, we'll keep things organized. I like to name this tracking comp. As this is the where we're going to do our camera tracker here. Just click the camera tracker button. I'm going to do some optimization. So I'm going to enable detailed analysis, reduce the target size to 50. Because it's a wide shot, I'm actually going to give an educated guess that the focal length is 24, and that gave us a much better track right off the bat there. You can actually see the perspective through the sizes of the points. We'll set the ground plane and origin, and we'll also enable our camera and null object. And now when we create a 3D layer, we can see it's in our scene. So again, we'll have that as our wand reference. Go into the particles comp, and I think we'll also do the optimizations to everything that we're going to have enabled, so that it's nice and quick, because it doesn't have to look beautiful when we're just trying to get the tracking and the animation done. So I'll bring in our plate there. Got to do the same color correction adjustments. Always helps to add a little bit of blue when you're trying to make it look like nighttime, and also bring down the highlights there. So we've replaced our scene camera with the custom tracked camera, and we've got our reference there as well for the wand. So now we want to get this effect to come in at the right time. Now, although you can you know, you can drag the layers forward and you know, offset the timing, delay it, you can't actually do the opposite, where if you drag the layers off to the left, the particles won't actually spawn because they need to start emitting at frame 0. So if we want to have the effect to come in early, we're actually going to just, you know, take our footage here, and we're just going to move that across, because we can just render, you know, this section here. It doesn't need to be at frame 0. And so now when we go into our casting locator, and we can adjust the orientation there to rotate the effect, and we'll just do our we can be quite loose here with the position, so we don't need to go through every single frame. I'm just making sure the effect is approximately in the right location. And then we'll enable some of our layers just so we can get a sense of what's going on. Because one challenge we need to address is the scale of the effect, because we want these expanding orbs to kind of engulf the camera. So we can see our orb there, it's expanding. And because we've moved the camera back, we're probably going to need to expand the radius of this orb so that we can get it to kind of move off screen. So we have this keyframe here. If you press U on the red layer there, we can actually go to the radius and increase that to 400. So we see it before and after. We've got the increased size there. And so now if we just look at the particles again, we can also address the floor as well. So if we unhide the layers, we can see this floor layer, and if we just increase the size there, we'll be able to cut off the bottom of the particles there so that they look like they're interacting with the floor, which is quite handy. And so once we've got all of that set up, we can also you know, copy the radius increase that we did to each of the 3 pulse layers and enable all of the effects, reset the particles back to 100, wait for that to cache in a little bit, and once we're happy with that, we can just give this a quick save and then pre-render this as an asset so that when we go to the export comp, it'll be nice and quick. So we'll just render this out, give it a name at full res with everything enabled for the duration of our shot there. We can see this one does take a little while to render, so that's why it's a good idea to pre-comp it. And so now we can bring back in our asset that we've rendered, and we no longer have to deal with the live simulation. We just have the pre-rendered asset, and we can get that. We can put our asset now that it's pre-rendered to frame 0, so we don't have to offset the footage in the export comp. We will want to adjust these displacement and chromatic separation keyframes because they're supposed to happen once the orb is visible. And we can always brighten up this effect a little bit in the pre-comp there. Since it's an asset, we can always put some keyframes on there just to get it a little bit more visible. But I'll keyframe that increase in opacity so that it only happens when the orb is expanding, and then once it starts to dissipate there, we get a more natural effect by keyframing that value. And so then quite quickly we can start to get our Patronus effect. And of course we can readjust the timing there if we want these pulsations to happen a little bit quicker. So now that we've looked at the Patronus effect in the version 5 folder, I think it's also worth having a look at the Expecto Patronum effect included in the version 4.1.5, as there are some visual differences between the 2 versions. So let's go and open that up. And for this I just switched my installation of Particular back to version 4.1.5, which you can do just by downloading the installer from the support section of Red Giant, and Maxon also offers that as well. And so in this version we're actually able to get quite a few extra particles on screen. And when it comes to which kind of versions you should use, I definitely prefer using version 5, because in most of the projects the new environmental settings allowed us to get visual improvements, especially with the Pyro Incantatum effect. We're able to get much more realistic kind of liquid magma that drops onto the floor there. And although they're very similar, in many cases we're able to get slightly better looking visuals, more realistic turbulence for some of those shields that are included in version 5, with the only exception being that the Patronus Maxima effect, because of performance reasons, we are actually able to get a lot more particles on screen in the version 4.1.5 version. So this is the one that we used for the promotional demo on YouTube. But if you prefer to use Trapcode Particular 5, what we actually did was pre-render a 4K version of this Patronus asset. So if I drag that into here, you can see this is a very large version of Patronus here. So it's 4K, which means you can zoom in to the effect like this to get the wand effect, and then we also have the expanding orbs included with it as well. So I'm just going to set that to the correct size there and then let this pre-render. And so if we play this back, you can see we have the full effect here. And so what you can do is just use this asset, and then in the export comp it'll look the same as it does once it applies all of these effects. And you can download this asset for free, because we'll put a link in the description of this video. So you have the version 5 version, you have the version 4.1.5 version, which is as this effect looks, and then we also pre-rendered this super 4K version of the asset as well that you can download. So even if you don't have Trapcode Magic yet, you can download that effect and have a play around with that. And this was just one of the spells included in Trapcode Magic. So as you can see, we have all these different spells that you can use, from dueling spells to shield spells, exploding charms, killing curses, the apparitions, the Patronus effects, and the Pyrio Incantatum effect, which is what we'll have a look at in detail next time. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for next time, where we'll be covering some of the other effects included in Trapcode Magic.